friends, hope all of you are doing fine. So last class we talked about the story, you remember? The best Christmas present in the world? Okay, herein we saw before, just a preface, that our writer, so he went to a junk shop in Bridgeport and he got a roll top desk. So he got a very much damaged roll top desk whose covering or whose veneer was completely damaged. He removed the veneer, and then after that he tried to pull out the drawers. Then in the last drawer he also found a black tin box, and within that black tin box was an envelope, and within that there was a letter which was to Mrs. Jim McPherson. Okay, so we saw here. Now what the author is doing, out of curiosity, he opened the letter, right? So he opened the letter and this is what it went after that. Okay, so it was already dated December 26, 1914, and it read like this. Dearest Cooney, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. So something very good had happened to this Jim McPherson. Okay, so we were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning. So all of them were standing in their trenches, that is it's a very big hole that has been dug. It is a ditch that has been dug. Okay, Christmas morning. Okay, it was crisp and quite all about as beautiful a morning as I have ever seen, as cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. So it was a Christmas morning and they were standing in their ditches. Okay, I should like to be able to tell you that we began it. But the truth, I'm ashamed to say, is that Fritz began it. So everybody tells, we have taken or takes the responsibility of every good thing to themselves. So that is what he has also been doing. But he also feels sad to say that it is Fritz who began it. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. So the next trench, there was a white flag that was being waving. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land. What is a no man's land? It is between two boundaries where no people live. That is a place where you go from the boundary of one country to the boundary or in entry of another country. Okay, so in between that there is no people living, and that is called a no man's land. Okay, fine. Happy Christmas, Tommy. Happy Christmas. When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, Same to you, Fritz. Same to you. I thought that would be that. So they thought that is it. They are wishing Christmas to one another. So they thought that's it. We all did. But then suddenly one of them was up there in his grey great coat and waving the white flag. Don't shoot, lads. So they would be probably in a fight. So they are saying, don't shoot. Someone shouted and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet and another. Keep your heads down, I told the men. It's a trick. But it wasn't. It wasn't a trick. So what was it? We will see to that. Okay. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. It's a Christmas day, Tommy. We have schnapps. We have sausage. We meet you? Yes. So they were planning to meet each other. By this time, there were dozens of them walking towards us across no man's land and not a rifle between them. So these people were not carrying any rifles. Okay, fine. Little Private Morris was the first up. Come on, boys. What are we waiting for? And then there was no stopping them. I was the officer. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose, but the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. So they were walking without rifles. Why should I even stop them? So as the captain, as the as the one who is heading the team, he should have Jim McPherson should have stopped the other enemy army to come inside, but he did not. He did not stop them, and it did not strike him either. Okay, all along their line and ours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another. Grey coats, khaki coats meeting in the middle, and I was one of them. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. See, nobody likes war, right? So everyone is looking for peace. So in the middle of the war, on the Christmas day, they were making peace. You cannot imagine, dearest Kuni, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of the first officer who approached me, hand outstretched. Hans Ulf, he said, gripping my arm warmly and holding it. I am from Düsseldorf. I play the cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. So they were meeting and greeting each other. Captain Jim McPherson, I replied. And a happy Christmas to you too. I'm a school teacher from Dorset in west of England. Oh, Dorset, he smiled. I know this place. I know it very well. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage, and we talked. So they were sitting together on a Christmas evening. The armies of two nations were fighting against each other. They were today sitting together and having a party, having a celebrations among each other. They were celebrating the peace. And we talked. Kuni, how we talked. He spoke almost perfect English. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset. Never even been to England. He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So out there is no man's land. We talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel and Surgeon Troy and Dorset. He had a wife and one son, both just 6 months ago. As I looked about me, there were hurdles of khaki and grey everywhere. All over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. Hans Ulf and I shared what was left of wonderful Christmas cake, Kuni. So they were celebrating with Christmas cakes, and it means khaki and this white grey coats, they were just all around in the no man's land. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. We agreed about everything. He was my enemy. There never was a Christmas party like it, Kuni. So you see, a person that you're fighting with a person at whom you are pointing your gunshots every day, and today you're playing with that same person. You are enjoying a Christmas party with the same person. Then someone, I don't know who, bought out a football. Great goals were dumped in piles to make goalposts. And the next thing, we knew it was Tommy against Fritz, out in the middle of no man's land. So they started playing football. Hans, Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. So there was no difference between both of the rival teams. He saw it too and smiled. Jim McPherson, he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. A football match. No one dies in a football match. The children are orphaned, wives become widows. I'd prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. He laughed at that. And together we watched the game. Sad to say, Cooney, Fritz won 2-1. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs. So it wasn't quite fair. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished and the snaps and the rum and the sausage had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we would all go home. So they only wished that everything became normal and all this fights, all this rivalry gets over. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hansel said. Take care, Jim McPherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly. Unwillingly, I felt. Who actually wishes to move out, after feeling that again from the next moment they are going to shoot at each other. Okay. He turned to wave just once and then became one of the 100 of grey-coated men drifting back towards their trenches. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol, and singing it quite beautifully. It was Still Nash, Silent Night. Our boys gave them rousing chorus of While Shepherd Watched. We exchanged carols for a while and then we all fell silent. We had a time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. Dearest Cooney, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. So herein, our author is reading out the letter that Jim McPherson wrote to his wife Cooney. On the third set, what happens, I folded the letter again. So our author is folding up the letter and slipped it carefully back into the envelope. I kept awake all night, but by morning I knew what had to do. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where Cooper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned out shell, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. I knocked the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of Mrs. Macpherson. So he reached out to Mrs. Macpherson because he got the address. You remember from there from the letter. Okay, so he just went up to the Bridgeport where the letter had given the address, and he searched for this house number 12. And there he found it was almost like a haunted area, roof gapping up, windows boarded up. So he just knocked next door and to find out where Mrs. Macpherson was. Oh yes, said the old man in slippers. He knew her very well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle-headed, but at her age she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. So she always preferred candles. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now, he told me. Burlington House on Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway, and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner, which was lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Corridor is the middle area, okay? So Mrs. Macpherson is not in with others, she told. She's rather confused today, so we thought it's best if she had a good rest. She has no family, No one visits. So I'm sure she will be too pleased to see you. So nobody visits Mrs. Macpherson, right? So Jim Macpherson is no more probably and had left the last letter. So she should be very happy as this boy is coming, our author is coming. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. She took him to a room and left him over there. Okay. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. Hello, I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. Happy Christmas, Cuny, I went on. I found this. I think it's yours. As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I found it, but I don't know she was listening. For a while, she said nothing, but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. She just had a stroke of the letter. Suddenly, she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest, she said. And here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim, dear. Sit down. I sat beside her and she kissed my cheeks. I read you a little so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea. I've made you a nice Christmas cake. Marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. So, when our author went to visit Mrs. Macpherson, she misunderstood our author to be Jim Macpherson, who was her husband, and started sharing her feelings towards Jim Macpherson and how much she missed. So this was the story about the best Christmas gift. Okay, thank you.